On the one hand, it's comforting to read this week's Parsha. This week is a week of comfort, Shabbat Nachamu. We just completed Tisha B'Av, a day of national mourning around the Jewish world, commemorating the loss of both Jerusalem temples, 586 BCE and then 70 CE, and a number of other calamities that have hit the Jewish people. Of course, this year Tisha B'Av felt like it came 29 days early, as the missiles from Gaza had been striking Israel non-stop during this period of time. Were the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, traditionally times of mourning leading up to this culminating moment. These 3 weeks were considered by a friend of mine, their son in Tzahal in the IDF, saying that the 3 weeks felt like 5 weeks this year. And it turns out, of course, that the ceasefire began during Tisha B'Av, during which, mercifully, no missiles have been flying. And now we're beginning to take accounting of the destruction that has happened both in Gaza and the trauma that has happened in Israel, the loss of dozens and dozens of Israeli lives. Of course, many look at the numbers of those who have died as the way of determining the morality of the situation. That is an absolutely unfair way of looking at the situation. And so I record this message for a number of reasons. One is to say that it is time for comfort within the Jewish people and beyond. Someone, a dear friend, pointed out last night to me that when I've been speaking about losses within Israel, I speak about them personally, one at a time. And that when I speak about losses of Palestinian life, and I do speak about losses of Palestinian lives as the erasures of images of God, a cruel robbing of their lives and dignity from the world by Hamas, for putting them in mortal danger over and over. When I speak about them, it is as a collective. I speak about Jewish losses as family, and I speak about Palestinian losses as human losses. And whereas my friend offered that as a critique, I know that it's true, and I don't feel it as a critique. It would be inhuman of me to not speak about my own children dying as my own children. It is, of course, lofty and aspirational, and part of who I am as a human rights advocate, to talk about anyone dying, any erasure of human life. I speak in deeply painful tones, and I mean it from my core when I talk about gun violence, when I talk about violence against women, when I talk about Gaza in shambles, Gaza in rubble. But that is not the same as when people use terms inappropriately to describe the losses of life in Gaza. When they use the word genocide, they absolutely offend to the core of anyone's soul by misnaming a defensive war that Israel had no choice but to fight. Do I agree with every decision Prime Minister Netanyahu's government has made over time? Absolutely not. Do I believe that his alliance with Avigdor Lieberman's party is a good thing? I do not. Do I agree with Naftali Bennett's positions in regards to many parts of the Israeli sector? I do not. Do I agree with another member of Likud, Moshe Feiglin, and his, absolutely to me, fascist opinions about Arabs? Absolutely not. But those disagreements are very different from understanding that Prime Minister Netanyahu led in a restrained way a response to terrorism from Hamas. Israel's populace is united in understanding, from left to right, that this was necessary. In fact, people to the extreme right are disappointed that Israel stopped its response to Hamas. People on the left, even the far left, actually see this war as a war not of Israel's choice. It was a necessary response to save Israeli lives. To the American government, who has been a stalwart supporter of the Iron Dome defense system, I ask you all to recognize that those support dollars are about saving lives, not about eradicating a people. That language is offensive to me personally. It is an offense against human rights, and ignores the bulk of the responsibility for the loss of lives in Gaza, which falls squarely on the shoulders of Hamas. Yes, there are splinter cells besides Hamas, but it is clear to anyone paying attention that Hamas is firing missiles from United Nations-funded schools, from hospitals, from homes, building terror tunnels under Israeli establishments, communities. None of this is being questioned as fact, and all of Israel recognizes the necessity of this war, which, please God, has ended. But there are critics on the left in America who are not facing the facts as they are recorded. There's no question the harshness of this response from Israel was harsher than many others have been. There's also no question that we understand its necessity. It is a terrible fact that war sometimes is fought, and fought morally. It doesn't make me any more comfortable during this week of Shabbat Nachamu, this week of the Shabbat of comfort after Tisha B'Av, to see death, to see the aftermath of our response. My heart grieves, seeing that the infrastructure that Gaza could have seen built was torn down by its own leadership's decisions. During the Shabbat, we also read Parshat V'etchanan, which is of Moshe begging from the peak of a cliff to enter into the land. And God says, you will not enter this. The promise you have worked and labored for, sacrificed so much to achieve, you will not see it. Not yourself, not with your feet on the ground, but I will grant you this exception. Climb up this mountain one time and look. Look at the promise that you have led your people to realize. There are IDF soldiers whose lives were sacrificed this year to continue trying to achieve the promise of a safe, free Jewish homeland. We need to continue defending it. Israel is a project in process of the Jewish people. Moshe's desperation to see it finished is our own desperation to see it secure. Only when it is secure can we actually begin to feel some of this comfort, so elusive during these days. And when I was at the Israel rally in San Francisco just this last Sunday, it was striking to me that not one person celebrated war. Not one person called for death to anyone. The Israelis who organized us, young Israelis who are students at Stanford University, all they wanted to do was sing songs of peace. The two songs, one of them was a very strange choice, was John Lennon's Imagine. Imagine a world living for the day. And then the other song was very, very important, and everyone who knew the song cried, Ein li eretz acheret, I have no other land. That desperation has to pervade the Jewish soul. Only then will we know comfort.